I want to talk about the dangerous myth of the love of your life. So some of you have heard me talk about the soulmate myth or the one or whatever we want to call it, our life partner. Truth be told, I really hate the term partner because it used to be used for gay couples or work partners, and now it's being the term used for our covenant love. And I'm like, that's so unromantic. But anyway, that's just me. And I think the idea of the love of your life sounds romantic, but it can be surprisingly dangerous because I'm hearing a lot of my clients quantify, the bar being set high or the love of their lives being defined as the person who matches their emotional intensity. But it's not always that way, at least not at first, because the structural integrity of a courtship is where love can actually grow and blossom like a seed that can be watered and gradually become a flower. If we believe there's one person uniquely meant for us and that being with them is the highest good, we can end up treating feelings as more important than promises, responsibilities, and covenant commitments. It is a message woven through movies, novels, and love songs. There is one person out there who is truly meant for you, your soulmate, the love of your life. And if you meet them, then you should totally be with them. But I want to ask you all a very uncomfortable question. What happens if you meet this so-called love of your life after you're already married and have kids? You guys know I am what's called a sober romantic, or maybe I've coined that term for myself. I'm a sober romantic. I think that falling in love is totally wonderful, but only when it submits to God's design of covenant marriage, where the two become one flesh. What God has put together, let no man put asunder, right? I've been married for almost 7 years to Tom Carlton, the love of my life. And one of the things that marriage has taught me is that love deepens through knowing. Hear me out. So I've watched my husband become a father. I have seen his patience, his incredible patience with me. I'm not a perfect person, not easy to love at the best of times. I've watched him grow as he parents our boys and models manhood to them. Those things I could only witness as his wife. The structure of covenant gave me access to a depth of knowing that wasn't available at the beginning. And that deeper knowledge has actually produced deeper love. So deeper knowledge has begotten deeper love, which means that even if I met a man who was more attractive, more charming, more exciting on first impression, and granted, given that I'm a dating and a relationship coach on social media, I have met many men like that, of that description. Even if they were more, so-called more, in my eyes on the first impression, the depth of knowing simply wouldn't be there. At best, I'd be comparing my reality with a projection, a fantasy with the covenant that I already have with Tom. And that's why I think the idea of the love of your life can become so dangerous. Because what then? Because most people never think through the implications of that belief. As you know, I have been listening to the biography of Roald Dahl through Aaron Tracy's podcast, The Secret World of Roald Dahl. And you can listen to this podcast, and I link it in the show notes. It is a fantastic podcast. I'm recommending it to anyone who will listen to me. So Dahl was married to actress Patricia Neal. They had 5 children together and endured significant hardships as a family, including Patricia's serious health struggles, including a life-altering stroke that she had to recover from. And there was this whole thing about Dahl being her very militant rehab consultant in a way. He was a pathological fixer, says Aaron Tracy. So yet, while still married, Dahl begins a long-term affair with Felicity Crossland, 11 years of an affair. Eventually, he leaves Patricia and marries Felicity. And what interests me is not the celebrity gossip bit or the speculation about who was a better match for him. It's the ethical question underneath it. Because if someone believes they have found the love of their life outside their marriage, does that justify the collateral damage? Like that, does that justify breaking promises that he's already made? Because modern culture often tells these stories through the eyes of the adults feelings, the adults chemistry, the adults happiness, the adults fulfillment. Oh, but they're so in love. Oh, but they're so happy. I've actually heard this, standing around with other mums at the park. But what about everyone else affected by that decision? Hello, like in Dahl's case, reports suggest that one of his daughters knew about the affair when she was only 16 years old and was burdened with secrets that no child should have to carry. And that detail stays with me and brings up my chronological snobbery. I'm like, how dare you? I would never do that to a teenager. I would never do that to a child. But maybe I'm overshooting. Okay, because marital breakdown is rarely confined to two adults. Children pay, families pay, trust pays. Entire family systems absorb the consequences. And this is where I think that this love of your life narrative becomes extremely dangerous in our culture. Because once personal happiness becomes the highest good, almost anything can be justified. Oh, but I finally found my person. We only get one life. It just happened. We've all heard the script, right? There is another way to think about love. What if marriage is not primarily about finding the person who makes you feel most alive in that moment? What if it is about becoming the kind of person capable of loving faithfully through changing seasons of life? Because that is inevitable. The only constant is change, right? Those are very different ideas. One treats love as this incredible feeling. You must match my energy. I must feel that spark with you. The other treats love as a practice. One asks, how do I feel today? And the other asks, what responsibilities do I have to the people who depend on me? Because I've made commitments to them. I don't think that the challenge is avoiding attraction to other people, especially when we're already in covenant, when we're already married, because life is long. You will meet remarkable people. The question is, what framework governs your behavior when the attraction appears? If the framework is follow the strongest feeling, then commitments become fragile because they are blown and tossed by the wind. In the book of James, a double-minded man is unstable in all he does. If the framework is honor your commitments, then feelings are weighed against responsibilities. And perhaps that's why stories like Dahl's continue to provoke debate. Maybe he believed he had found a deeper love with Felicity. Maybe he did not. None of us can really know. But we can ask whether pursuing that relationship justified betraying Patricia, betraying his spouse of 30 years, destabilizing a family and placing children in the middle of a dumb adult choices. Excuse my judgment call on that, but I do think destroying a child's home is not okay. Because love is not merely desire or chemistry. It also has a moral dimension, a sacrificial dimension, a covenant dimension. From a Christian perspective, that matters enormously. I'm not saying your feelings don't matter. I'm saying your feelings need to be weighed against your responsibilities and your commitments. Scripture presents love not primarily as self-expression, but as self-giving. And as Ephesians 5 reminds us, husbands are called to love their wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. That is covenant language. It is not about convenience. It's not chemistry. It is covenant. The world says, follow your heart. But the Christian worldview says, examine your heart and remain faithful, because the heart is deceitful and sick above all things. The world asks, what will make me the happiest? And the Christian worldview asks, what is right? What is true and what is faithful? Good, better, best. His good, pleasing, and perfect will. Those are radically different questions. And the older I get, the less interested I become in stories about finding the love of your life, this magical, mystical love of my life. And the more interested I become in stories about becoming the kind of person who can love faithfully across an entire lifetime. Because when marriages break down, the consequences rarely stop with the couple. Because children carry memories, families carry wounds. Trust can take years to rebuild. That doesn't mean every marriage should continue under every circumstance. I'm not saying stay in an abusive marriage because you're more godly because of it. It does mean, however, that decisions about love cannot be evaluated solely through the lens of personal fulfillment. And this is where I'm going to be that annoying person that doesn't give you a black and white answer, because I believe in critical thinking and I want this podcast today to throw your mind into the gray area of making your own decision, of weighing things up for yourself, because our feelings must also be evaluated through the lens of responsibility. And I think that's perhaps the deeper lesson in Roald Dahl's story. Not whether he found a better match, but whether our culture has become so focused on individual happiness that we overlook the costs borne by others, namely helpless, dependent children. Culture tells us that ultimate love story is finding the right person, and Christianity tells us that the deeper love story is becoming the right kind of person to carry our cross, which means different things in different people's contexts. So one vision centers fulfillment and the other centers faithfulness. One asks whether your feelings are strong enough to justify a choice, and the other asks whether your character is strong enough to keep a promise. And in the end, that may be the most important distinction of all, because the greatest love of your life may not be the person who makes your heart race in a particular moment. It may be the person you choose day after day, year after year, to love with integrity, sacrifice, and covenant faithfulness. And that's not the love story our culture celebrates most often, but it may be the one that leaves the deepest legacy. I am a huge believer in boring kitchen sink love. I believe it is the most romantic. I believe it is the one that creates securely attached children. That's my end game. I don't know what yours is. And like most of you who know Roald Dahl, it's because he was the author of Matilda, the BFG, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Everyone talks and makes references to golden tickets in our chocolate bars all the time. He is a big deal. So I hope you found that the crux of his story is whether finding our soulmate after we're married with 5 children is worth the collateral damage. That's the end. I'll see you later.